Cornel West, in his new book, goes after Obama. Salon and Raw Story reported on an interesting piece of his new book. He says, quote, Obama is the embodiment of a shift in black leadership from the voices of social movements to those of elected officials in the mainstream political system. This shift produces voices that are rarely, if ever, critical of this system. This shift is part of a larger structural transformation in the history of mid-20th century capitalism in which neoliberal elites marginalize social movements and prophetic voices in the name of consolidating a rising oligarchy at the top, leaving a devastated working class in the middle, and desperate poor people whose labor is no longer necessary for the system at the bottom. He continues, the role of mass media, especially a corporate media beholden to the U.S. neoliberal regime, is to keep public discourse narrow and deodorized. This fundamental power to define the political terrain and categories attempts to render prophetic voices invisible. Because of this, the state of black America in the age of Obama has been one of desperation, confusion, and capitulation. The desperation is rooted in the escalating suffering on every front. The confusion arises from a conflation of symbol and substance. The capitulation rests on an obsessive need to protect the first black president against all forms of criticism. The Obama presidency has been primarily a Wall Street presidency, drone presidency, mass surveillance presidency, unwilling to concretely target the new Jim Crow, massive unemployment, and other forms of poor and black social misery. His major effort to focus on poor black men was charity and philanthropy, not justice or public policy. And finally, he says Obama is no more than, quote, the black face of American empire. Ouch. That burns. Now, is his criticism of Obama merited? Is it accurate? I say both yes and no. That's shocking. This is probably the first time you guys have heard me slightly disagree with the criticism of Obama that comes from the left. Okay, and to be clear, my politics align much, much, much more with Dr. Cornel West and less with Obama, who I agree with him is a center-right, corporate Clinton-style New Democrat, which is basically an old-school Republican, okay? But here's where I slightly disagree with him. He seems to be indicating the same thing that Michael Moore said recently, how, oh, you want to know what Obama's going to be known as? The first black president. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. That's it. Now, I don't think that's true. I think Obama, while I agree with virtually every specific criticism he lays out. So to repeat it, Wall Street presidency, yes. Drone presidency, yes. Mass surveillance presidency, yes. Unwilling to correct the new Jim Crow, yes. Massive unemployment, yes. And other forms of poor and black social misery, yes. But you have to give credit where credit is due. There are two things where, although these aren't perfect, and I would have done much, much more than Obama did, you have to give credit on the issue of healthcare reform, Obamacare, and you have to give credit on stopping the Great Recession from possibly becoming a depression and doing the stimulus and making unemployment now is what, 5.9% when he basically inherited 10%? Again, you can disagree, Dr. Cornel West, and I would probably agree with you if we sat down and went back and forth about what he could have done more. I'm on the record of being in favor of a single-payer system. I want Medicare for all, period. I want all healthcare funding to be tax-funded, and that's the end of the conversation. I don't even want fucking copays. Okay, I'm 100% on that page. In terms of stopping the Great Recession, I would have done a New Deal. So I would have done, FDR Part 2, man. You do massive infrastructure spending, so we stop. The grade that our infrastructure gets right now, according to the Civil Society of Engineers, is a D. So we could totally redo all of the infrastructure across the United States of America, put so many people to work, help the country, modernize the country, become number one in an area, create a tremendous number of jobs, okay? Yes, redistribute wealth, which we need to do from the oligarchy class and the billionaires, and give it back to middle class and poor people, again, like FDR did. So I agree with those things for sure. But if you want to talk about through a historical lens, how is President Obama going to be judged? People are going to say he got comprehensive health care reform. No other president was able to do it. And that's true. Again, it's the Republican proposal where you expand Medicaid and then you force people via an individual mandate to go to the private sector and get health care. I disagree with that proposal. Okay, again, I want Medicare for all, but it is a step in the right direction because what we had before was the grossest thing the modern world has ever seen. 45,000 people dying every year because they don't have access to basic health care, 40 million people uninsured. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the horrendous problems. So we did stop some problems. I mean, it might just be a Band-Aid with some ointment on it over a gaping gangrenous wound, but it was something, and history is going to say, well, he did the first right thing, and he was able to stop the Great Recession from becoming a depression. So, aside from those two things, I agree with Dr. Cornel West completely. Okay, I think he's right about everything here, and I think his solutions and my solutions would be very, very similar. But I think the reason why I wanted to talk about this and slightly disagree with him is that I would like progressives to be as accurate as possible in what we say because that's kind of what we're known for. Like, that's kind of our thing. Like, let's be accurate and point to the facts and understand reality. So although this is a good indictment and a broad sweeping indictment, maybe it should have been a little bit less broad and a little bit more specific.